Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. It's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters, writers, editors, journalists, all different people who put stuff out in the Bronx so you can get an idea kind of like what they're thinking about and what really is behind some of the most important stories in the borough of the Bronx. In our second segment, we usually do arts and culture, and you are going to love the segment that we have for you. It's people doing some incredible music for all the people in the Bronx. So we'll do that in our second segment. To start, though, we'll say hi to Rosalind Adams, who's an investigative reporter for The City, where she reports on housing and real estate. Not quite the subject for this dialogue, but nice to see you, Rosalind.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
Rosalind, as I'm reminded her, has written extensively about the cannabis rollout in New York State, and it's had some bumps and bruises, to say the least. Let's just start with in May, you wrote a story about the management director, Chris Alexander, resigning after criticisms from the governor. What was the governor's beef at the time?
Well, I think, this really, it's been a troubled rollout. We have to go back to sort of 2021 was legalization. And, the Office of Cannabis Management started up towards the end of that year as Hochul took office. And, I think there were so many expectations about how quickly we could get stores open. And by really January of this year in 2023, um, the state was so far off pace of how many stores had opened that the governor had sort of said, um, publicly that this disaster had
Yeah.
really been this rollout had really been a
We
disaster.
really got to do something about it. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
that was really the
exactly.
thing. And then, I mean, I remember that there were growers who were promised certain opportunities, and they were like, all of a sudden, we have stock that we can't get rid of because the thing is not working. And then, of course, the competition from the illegals. And you wrote about this. You showed a rather extraordinary video of a raid, and this kind of was out of control. They wanted the New York City sheriff to be able to handle this, but it didn't seem to make sense, and certainly wasn't effective for the numbers of illegal stores that we have or
Yeah,
had.
so I think what the governor is trying to do right now is play catch up to what's happened the last couple of years. So there were new enforcement measures passed in April or May of this year that allowed local law enforcement to help shut down stores and to also padlock some of these illegal stores. And so that's what you're seeing now is the NYPD are going. They're being pretty aggressive. You can see in the video they're threatening to arrest almost as soon as they get into the store. Really only 30 seconds goes by.
Let me just interject about that. There didn't seem to be like the normal process that police use if God forbid somebody's got something going on in their store or in their apartment. They have a warrant. Here they were just like open up the door, put them in handcuffs, and take them out. I mean, it's a little weird. The dynamic wasn't like set, I guess is the word that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and that's what like lawyers who represent some of these shopkeepers are pointing out as well. Like, people still have the right to ask for, to ask for a warrant or and that's sort of what's in contention right now. When the original MRTA law passed legalization, like there was a provision that in there that said shop owners could refuse a regulatory inspection. And what we're seeing right now is not that certainly, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so they've taken down a bunch of them. What was I wasn't clear on this myself, just as a resident who reads the newspapers. What was
Yeah.
the difference between the way this was policed in the past versus what the state did at budget time, and changed the way that this is being handled now that apparently gives the sheriff's office more teeth?
So now they can go in and padlock the stores, where they
As
didn't
opposed
really.
to letting them open again.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what they were doing before is they would do an inspection, they would seize product, they put up, like, maybe you've seen the notice, like, notice of illegal cannabis
I
here.
have seen them, yeah.
Yeah, but the stores would reopen pretty quickly. The you know, I wrote a story last October that the Office of Cannabis Management didn't really have the resources to do the hearings. So people, they'd get fined, but I wrote another story that the people weren't paying their fines. So it wasn't enough of a deterrent, and the state really felt like they had to do more, which is where this padlocking provision came in.
And, I have to say, and I travel in the Bronx and, of course, all throughout New York City, this illegal stores are everywhere. And, of course, in some cases, they're called a smoke shop and they sell paraphernalia. It's not clear whether or not they're selling, an illegal product. Um,
Yeah.
w- I guess just again as a regular person, what are the prospects of actually trying to get in there and make it so that they don't compete so heavily with regulated stores?
Well, actually, like this most recent legislation has been very effective. I think when you're walking around Manhattan now, you can see the bunch of, the cops are shutting some of them down, but also some of them are just deciding that it's not worth
It's
it
not worth
anymore.
it.
And
Yeah, well, that's
yeah,
good.
they're closing on their own.
Mhm.
Um, so, you know, the video aside and how these inspections are going, the increased enforcement is more of a deterrent, and we are seeing less of these stores now.
Now, but then June 18th, you wrote a story that cannabis licensees blast Hochul for disastrous rollout, even though the governor says there's a new era for the industry. Are they going to calm calm down, or do they still have a reasonable beef about what could be done?
Yeah, so that story was really in response to an earlier story I wrote about the state's cannabis, like social equity investment fund,
Right?
um, and
Yes.
its agreement with Chicago Atlantic. And that agreement was very, very secret. The state really refused to answer questions about it, kept saying that they were helping businesses start up. The idea was that the state would create this $200 million fund that would finance dispensaries to open, and then the dispensary operators would take out loans from that fund, and pay them back over time. So they'd be handed like a turnkey dispensary. So not that many of those are open right now. I think we're
Right.
at like 16, but the deals have been, they're very heavy loans, they're very steep costs. And so I think there is some of the people that are in the legal program saying, like, well, wait, what about our deal? We didn't get a very good deal in this. Um, but yeah, I mean, it also speaks to how many different things are going on at once. There's the people that are
Yeah.
funded by the investment fund program. There's the people that are trying to get open on their own. There's like this gray market area as well of these shops. So it's been a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
time.
It just strikes me as ironic, and I did a couple of shows on my other program, Bronx Talk, with advocates who were really excited about number one. The original plans were to make sure that people who had been hurt by the system in the past got a chance to, get some, something out of it finally, and get their lives not hurt by what had happened to them, being arrested and everything else. But then, like, and there were great high hopes that we were going to do this, we were going to do it right, it was going to be regulated, the people who had been hurt were going to open businesses. And then it
Right.
rolled out, and then we hear stories like the one you wrote. I think it was Senator, one of the Bronx senators, Gustavo Rivera and Liz Kruger, who came out and complained about the funds. When I hear and read what you wrote about it kind of being a secret fund, it's almost like that was what we were trying to stop in the first place, and
Yeah.
we never got there in a way. I suppose my hope and the hope of everybody is that one day we will get there.
Yeah, I think some of what we're seeing is like, when you compare what's happening in New York, like we're not the first state to go through these issues. I
Yes,
think,
that's true.
but New York really wanted to make, the most ambitious law that they could. The law itself really stands out as prioritizing social equity candidates in a new way. The social equity fund they created is bigger than any other state has. Um, And, the state did license people that had been harmed by past drug laws first. And it did license farmers that had gone bankrupt from growing hemp when that market collapsed.
Right.
So it is trying, but yeah, I think what you're seeing in the fund is, when there's a big pool of money and there's a lot of secrecy, there's
But
still questions.
well, yeah, that not only New York State, every state. Do you think that, I was trying to think back to the timing of the whole rollout. Did some of that get kind of lost between the two governors, Governor Cuomo, and then Hochul had to kind of inherit something, or is my timing off and it didn't turn out? It wasn't. It was really was Hochul's thing to begin with. Do
It
you
was
have a
all
recollection? It was all
the law.
Hochul's thing.
Yeah, the law passed in March 2021, but I think because of what Cuomo was dealing with, the Office of Cannabis Management was
Right.
not created under his tenure, and that was really one of the first things she did when she took
Was to create
office,
the office.
was created
Yeah.
and say, "I'm going to get this off the ground."
But one thing, let's not be totally negative. What I hear from a lot of
Yeah,
people is that the stores themselves are well managed. The product is there. They
yeah,
treat people well. I mean, I've heard this from a lot of people. So I guess when for people who are interested in it, when you go into a licensed store, it's a lot better than, of course, buying from illegals because you don't know what you're going to get, and who knows where it came from. And you're kind of outside the system. It's probably not a good thing. So here's
yeah.
the next question: what else you working on? Any sneak peek we can find out about what you got going on?
Um, you know, as
I
I
put you
like
on the spot. I know that.
say to all of my, sources that I talk to frequently, it's never a dull moment in cannabis. There's always something new that's about to happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
it's a very busy beat right now.
and have you been moved from housing and real estate totally? Because that's how you're
Yeah,
listed on the website.
that is what my bio says on the website. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
it started as one story last September.
Yeah.
It's been a lot more since then.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, I get that.
yeah,
Right. Rosalind Adams from the city. So I won't say she reports on housing and real estate. She's really been doing cannabis and has done a great job. There's a lot to read and there's a lot to learn about it because it's involved in our neighborhoods. It's involved in the people of the Bronx. So we appreciate your time this evening on the Bronx Buzz.
yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. We're going to take a short break, folks. When we come back, as I said, a music organization that does things a little bit differently. Don't go away.